Hi, friends. This is Kathy Lanzalaco. Welcome to another episode of Inspire Careers Spotlight on Careers, the video podcast series where I interview experts from all across the career management space to bring you best-in-class career-related information and to keep you up to date to help you advance in your own career. I'm so excited. Today, my guest is Michelle Podlesni. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Kathy. How are you?
Wonderful. I'm so excited to have you here and can't wait to tell everybody that's listening about what our connection is here. But let me introduce Michelle first. Michelle is president of the National Nurses in Business Association and the CEO of Bloom Service Group. She's an accomplished businesswoman, U.S. Navy veteran, and a nurse, yay, with over 35 years of experience ranging from clinical care, case management, and healthcare information technology to becoming a nationally known speaker, best-selling author, and serial nurse entrepreneur. She has a proven track record of leadership across C-level executive management of startups and established multi-million-dollar companies. Michelle is widely recognized and respected authority in business, and that's how we got together. Michelle has been coaching managers, executive, and nurses for the past 20 years. Her true passion for mentoring and helping others succeed in business has made her a sought-after speaker, instructor, and business advisor, and fueled her Amazon #1 best-selling book, Unconventional Nurse, Going from Burnout to Bliss. So she joined the National Nurses in Business Association in 2014, and now she speaks nationally on nurse entrepreneurship. And the NNBA, which is the National Nurses in Business Association, provides nurses with the knowledge and tools to meet their goals and connect nurses to an extensive network of colleagues and resources to help them navigate the entrepreneurial journey. And I have to tell you that as a nurse entrepreneur myself, I just wish I had known about her organization sooner because I'm in love with it now and it would have helped me years ago. But we'll get into all of that. So welcome, Michelle.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
So I know I've introduced you, but why don't we let you tell our listeners a little bit more about you, and then we can talk about our connection. We can talk about a lot of stuff, but you've had an incredible career in nursing, and I think it's so important for nurses to hear that there is life beyond the bedside. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey?
Well, in a condensed way, it seems like, oh, all these different high notes, but we don't know that when we start out. So
Right.
basically, I know I always wanted to be a nurse, but I started becoming a corpsman in the Navy. So I was a corpsman working in naval hospitals. And after 4 years, I got out. And that GI Bill is what put me through nursing school. And so it was a little bit around the bend way of going into nursing, but I always knew I wanted to be a nurse. I always loved healthcare. So I did that, and I worked, traditionally at the bedside. I was an ICU nurse. And then the last role I had in a hospital-based nursing was a charge nurse on a med-surg unit. And basically, after about 10 years of nursing, I got really burned out. And it was the first time. And it was just looking at things and saying, I'm out of step with my friends and family. I don't have weekends off. I'm working most holidays. Everything was pretty random at the time. And so I was just really tired of it. I wanted something normal. So that's when I started looking, how else can I use my nursing out there?
Now,
And I found
what year was this nurse?
this was
Yours
19 at the end of 1985.
See,
So this,
that's completely ahead of the curve. So I just wanted to kind of set that tone for when you started
mm,
having those thoughts. Go ahead.
oh, definitely. The term burnout wasn't even used then.
Yeah.
When I was in the hospital, there we never talked about burnout. We never talked about short staffing. We
Yeah.
never talked about salary issues. None of the three big hits that nurses are talking about today
Yeah.
at the bedside that wasn't out there. It was just me after so many years with patient care at the bedside that I just wanted to have weekends off and holidays off. And hospital nursing was starting to get pretty stressful at the time. It was just the beginning of it. So anyway, I found a wonderful opportunity with a large insurance company. I was a healthcare resource manager. And what happened was I would work with hundreds of claims examiners and help them interpret what they were reading in, let's say, operation reports, et cetera. So I did a lot of medical bill review and explanation to them. And then the other thing, I got to work with claimants and find out what would be in their best interest for different resources, and how to maximize the resources available to them. But the biggest thing was that role introduced me to computers and to a passion that I didn't know I had. And I really got into healthcare analysis, healthcare data analysis. I loved it. And I would say that was a pivotal moment in my career, because after that, I never turned back. I really got into it, and different jobs that came afterwards. So I worked always with medical review of records and utilization review management. I worked for a nonprofit, the Georgia Medical Care Foundation. And as I was there, I was recruiting physician peer reviewers to be on panels to do some specific review for us, for the organization. And there was a doctor at the time who I interviewed to be a peer reviewer, but he ended up recruiting me to work with him to install his software program into a company called Crawford and Company that reviewed workers' medical bills. So it was in the workers' comp field, and it was software that reviewed medical records and then made recommendations. Long story short, I ended up going to Crawford and Company, working as a liaison with the programmers on a software product. And we installed this product into 4 offices around the country at the time. It was a new business within a business. So I was very much starting this path of entrepreneurship through a company. And after that, I worked with another couple startups, started an organization with another gentleman, and it was called General Care Review, which merged into Genix. And maybe, part of your audience knows Genix.
I used to work for Genix.
You're kidding. Is that a small world?
As you're talking about this, I was going to say that, wow, I didn't realize we had that same connection in terms of how we both left the hospital, but I left the hospital to do medical case management for Genix. Yes.
Is that amazing? Well, anyway, so
that's crazy.
I was there at Genix. I was the vice president of operations for Genix for all the medical management and bill review operations. And so that's funny that we have that.
That's awesome.
And then after that, I went to another startup organization, and it was called Comp Review. And after having 28 offices around the country, I hired nurses in all of those offices to be the managers. It was just a great experience. It was very busy, very fun. The company that I was running at the time, Comp Review, was hundreds of employees. We had over a third of the workers' compensation market, meaning all the third-party administrators, all the insurance companies, self-insureds. They used our software. They either licensed it or we provided a service as a SaaS company to them. So that was my background in the corporate world. And as a result of that, I would meet people and they would ask me about my nursing journey, and I would kind of walk through the steps, how it evolved. I never thought in my wildest dreams that I would end up running a large software company as a nurse. And so people would say that to me, how did a nurse end up doing that? And as I explained it, they would say, you should write a book. And so I did. And that's how I wrote Unconventional Nurse, Going from Burnout to Bliss. And then as a result of writing that, I was being asked to speak, and because the book became an Amazon #1 bestseller in nursing. So the NNBA, because the NNBA started in 1985, it was having its conference, its annual conference, and the president at the time contacted me and asked me to speak at the 2013 conference. And I did. And a year later, I ended up being recruited to take over the NNBA. And that's what I've done since. So I've always been involved in coaching. I've always been involved in workshops and speaking and everything about all the wonderful avenues and opportunities that a nursing education and experience provides. It's just been incredible. I love it.
That's incredible. That's an amazing, amazing journey. And our paths have so many intertwined things. And we're of that same age too. And I think, nursing in the 80s, that's when I started, and in nursing into the 90s at hospital nursing, you didn't have a lot of options, but you had a lot of talent. And this is the thing with
Mm-hmm.
nurses. And while nursing has evolved tremendously and it's gotten a lot more technical, which is really great because nurses are great technicians in many ways. There's so many people that go into it and they want to nurture and they want to help, but I don't think people recognize how rigorous a nursing education is and what you really
Right.
need to know to be successful. So when I hear your story about falling in love with the data, not recognizing that you had that abilities, running a tech company, it makes sense to me now that I understand more about um a nursing profile and seeing what nurses are capable of doing. I'm so excited that you were able to do that. But let me ask you this, Michelle. So as you look back now and you say, well, I had all these things and I, started with the interviewing the doctors and hiring the nurses. What do you think was one of the biggest challenges you had though? Because in the 1980s, when you were starting to make this transition, I feel like, you tell me, but I feel like a lot of people probably weren't expecting you to be that ingenious, that ambitious, that smart. Did they try to put you in boxes? Like, what was your reflection of that time?
Well, I have lots of stories about that time. When you're the only woman in a boardroom with
Yes.
Fortune 500 companies, and believe me, there were many experiences I had in there that, let's say, people were shocked to learn who I was and what I was doing.
Yeah.
So I would say that the biggest, um, factor is just to be confident in yourself. And, courage has a big part of everything we do.
Mhm.
Because frankly, to be a nurse, to go through nursing school and to be a nurse and to work with patients that range along the spectrum of illness or injury, it takes a lot of courage to go in every day,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I think that that's, sort of underplayed, um, as far as just showing up and doing the work involves a lot of courage. You don't know what you're facing as a nurse many times when you go in there. And that was the case in the hospital. That was the case starting in school with some of the things that would come at us, but that was the case in the hospital for sure every day. And it was the case afterwards in every role that I've had since. Definitely courage is a part of it. Fortitude, I would say, is important.
It is. And I think when you talk about, now when I'm a professional resume writer and career coach, and when I'm helping people, we often talk about professional agility and being able to, to work through ambiguity and whatever. Isn't that the definition of hospital nursing? Like, to your point,
Exactly.
you just don't know what you're going to get on any day. And I don't think I even recognized it at the time, but it's such an emotional burden in so many ways that we carry for our patients. Wouldn't you think so? Wouldn't you
I
agree?
do. I definitely do. I think that it's taxing across the board,
Mhm.
physically,
Yeah.
emotionally, mentally, spiritually at times. I mean, I
Yeah.
worked in intensive care, and many, many times I had colleagues that would say, Michelle, come over and be with this person. This is it's really touchy right now and everything, because they knew I was comfortable in that environment.
Right.
um i- so it touches on every aspect that we are as people. um
Yeah.
and that's why nurses need you know restoration and being refreshed and renewed, that you just can't be giving out all the time, because you are really giving it your all every day that you go in there.
Yeah, and I think even though there are more and more men that have entered the field, which is exciting to see, it's still a nurse. A nursing is still a very heavy female driven industry in terms of there's still
Yes,
more women in it.
it's good to have a interdisciplinary approach and have multiple parties with exchanging ideas. I really like some of the environments that I see where there's more of the whole team aspect in with nursing and
Mhm.
taking care of patients, where you have pharmacy, respiratory,
Yes.
lab. I mean, everybody meeting together and discussing things. I think that brings a lot to the table.
Yeah, it's evolved. It is, and it's exciting to see. Let me ask you this, from your years in nursing and now looking back on it as a serial entrepreneur, and I do want to talk a lot about what you're doing with the NNBA. Um, what do you think was what was the greatest thing that you gained from the actual bedside nursing those early days that you really feel like helped you very much in making that transition into leaving the hospital and becoming an entrepreneur?
Well, I actually talk about it in my book. There's two things for sure that helped me then and have helped me ever since, because I've used it in my corporate career. I've used it ever since. And then when I turned towards entrepreneurship in 2003 is when I went full time into an entrepreneurial journey. And that is Maslow's hierarchy of needs and the nursing process, because Maslow's taught strategically. Certain things have to be covered, the basics before you can self-actualize. And the nursing process walks you through an assessment, a plan, analysis, a plan, implementation, etc. Both of those things literally I used in business, in the corporate world. It's how I structured different meetings. It's how I gathered information and did results. So I loved nursing for what it did for me for decision making and planning and critical thinking and creative thinking.
The one thing I also, and I agree with you with all of those things, and the one thing I'll add to that is it's helped me establish priority, like burning priorities in my life now. So when I'm working with clients or I'm working on business initiatives, and someone says it's an emergency, I say, well, it's probably not really an emergency. Let's prioritize it. When you're not dealing with life and death things, other things take on the right amount of priority, right? So they're important things and they're things that we have to get done. But once you've had that experience, everything else really you have to put into perspective.
Absolutely. And like I said, I had mentioned it in my book because of how valuable it was for me in entrepreneurship. It
Yeah.
was just um, a fantastic anchor to apply situations to.
I used to have a mentor many, many years ago, and unfortunately, she passed very early, but she was instrumental in my career development. And I will never forget that she told me back in the late 90s, she said, Kathy, you can do anything. You have to think broader than what you're doing today. She said, nurses are smart and they can do anything. And I have always carried that with me. And it goes back to what you just talked about gaining those critical thinking skills, right? And the organization skills and the communication and, bringing all of these things into it. And I don't think people fully appreciated it back then. I know I didn't even, but I see it absolutely playing out in the way that I run my business today.
That's
Drawing
excellent.
Yeah, drawing on that all the time. But let's talk a little bit more now. I know you have all these points in your journey, but right now I want to talk about what you are doing in this space in nursing with the NNBA. But I'm going to set you up because I'm going to ask you a question, and I think I know the answer. And that
Okay.
is, what do you think is the most exciting thing happening in nursing today?
Well, the most exciting thing happening in nursing today is that nurses are recognizing their potential in so many different areas and in entrepreneurship. I mean, there are a lot of nurses out there now that are thinking entrepreneurially and understand that there is a place for them to exercise that creativity and that potential. So that's what's exciting to me is they're definitely seeing more and more entrepreneurial models that work, and they're thinking, how can I apply that to my career?
Mhm. That's exactly what I was hoping you would say. So that's a perfect lead into talking about the NNBA and how we got connected as well. So tell our listeners again a little bit about the NNBA. Talk to us about the membership and what that base looks like right now. And then I want to talk about the conference that's coming up. But talk to us a little bit about the organization and the support that you provide.
Well, like I said, the organization started in 1985, and I love how it started and how it evolved and how it's grown, because it started as a newsletter called the Nurse Entrepreneurs Exchange, which is now a series of interviews that I'm doing that you were on our interview platform, which is wonderful. But anyway, that evolved very quickly. That newsletter was to give nurses information, to share information about what else could nurses be doing besides bedside nursing. And so they exchanged ideas, and it grew and it evolved very quickly into the founding of the NNBA, which has been dedicated to nurses practicing independently through entrepreneurial models. It's the only professional organization that does this and addresses this. So that evolved pretty quickly. And we have members actually from back then. We still have members from that
Wow.
time period. It's hard to describe the breadth of membership because it's so different. There are so many different aspects to it. But the most popular categories out there are consulting. Now think about consulting from the standpoint of consulting in a vast array of expertise. So
Mhm.
maybe someone is consulting on cardiac issues. Maybe somebody's on diabetic, working in diabetic teaching. Someone is consulting in education practices. There's every type of specialty out there in healthcare has a consultant that has that expertise. So that's a large group. We have case management, patient advocacy, healthcare advocates that are out there. We have legal nurse consultants. We have a lot of geriatric elder care type businesses. We have staffing agency businesses. And there are a lot of nurse practitioners, and it's very interesting. Some have clinical practices. Some are devoted to a space of health and wellness, a great deal of activity in health and wellness and holistic type care. So there's just hundreds and hundreds of different ways that nurses are expressing their careers through entrepreneurial models. So what the NNBA provides is business education. It's customized for nurses. We provide, networking and education option, resources, staffing, connection. But I think one of the biggest things is just the ability to show all the different business models, the nursing business models that work and that are out there. And that's probably one of the biggest reasons of our annual conference on nurse entrepreneurship being so popular, because once nurses come to this event and see it and hear different options, they are inspired and motivated then to go ahead with that nudge that they've been feeling about wanting to have their own business.
Yeah, last year was my first conference, and it was an incredible feeling. I loved being with my fellow nurses, even, and I stay in touch with my colleagues from the hospital and the women I went to nursing school with. But there's something about coming back into that space where you all have that shared experience and you've all been through so much of that. And I just loved that environment. But what I found very interesting, based on what you were saying, was that I was sitting at a table, and most of the people at that table during the conference hadn't started their own business yet. They were just responding to that nudge that they were feeling, and they came to learn more. And I think in many ways, they came to see it being successful in others. So, getting that strength from others and saying, well, gee, there is so much to do, so many options that I could take. What's out there? I want to see other people succeeding at it. I did not expect that. I was really impressed with that. People that hadn't taken the leap yet, but that were like, I need this.
I find it very interesting to look at the complexion of the audience when we're there. And I would say that it is either 60-40 or 50-50 most years, split between established nurse entrepreneurs or established business owners and the aspiring entrepreneurs. They're looking at the different ways. They're taking every pre-conference workshop they can. They're sitting in and they're just listening to everyone to think, okay, this looks good. This works. This doesn't work. I have to talk to this person. I think one of the things too that our conference and how it's different, all the speakers are approachable. I think that there is a high access from the audience to the speakers, and we want to provide that. That's part of our core values, because our core values deal with encouragement, empowerment, education, serve, and connect. So that serve and connect is very big in our organization, especially with the speakers that are involved each year, of which you're speaking at this year's conference. I'm excited about that.
I am excited. For those of you listening, you're probably not surprised what I'm going to talk about, but these nurses, I am excited to present it to them. And that is leveraging LinkedIn to build your nurse entrepreneur business. So it's so exciting because they're so hungry for the information, and there is so much opportunity to be able to build your business on LinkedIn, whether you have a brick and mortar business that you have. It's a very locally driven business, whether it's digital, whether it's e-commerce, whatever it is, there's a place for you on LinkedIn. So I'm excited, really excited about that.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. The NNBA is basically Nurses Bridge to Business. nurses aren't taught about business in nursing
No.
school.
Uh-uh.
Now, in some master's programs, there's somewhat of, they touch a little bit on entrepreneurship, but nurses are taught what they need to pass the NCLEX. So they don't get this information. They don't understand business. And we try to break it down that really you'll be very successful in business. I say all the time, nurses make great business owners. I've seen it over and over. And once they see that they can transfer their skills from nursing into a business, Nellie bar the door, they're going through. So it's
Yeah.
wonderful to watch.
Yeah, but I want to go back to something you just said too. You talked about how accessible the speakers were. And I think
Mhm.
that's important for people to understand when you come to these events because they can be a little intimidating, particularly if you have not started your own business. You're not sure about the right questions to ask. You're not sure necessarily where you're going to fit in. But as someone that was completely new to the organization and really just came out on a whim because another nurse friend of mine had recommended it to me and said, "Oh, did you know?" And I knew it was kind of my tribe. The welcoming atmosphere was incredible. And again, I think it's that collective of nurses, and we are truly all pulling for each other. And there's nothing but that support there because we're not competing against each other. And I felt very welcomed. And the fact that you and I have developed this relationship, I think
Right.
speaks volumes to the leadership, to certainly your leadership style and the leadership of everyone involved in the NNBA.
Well, I always think about too, what helped me?
Mhm.
What assisted me in making it outside of what is a traditional role for nurses? And it's getting that encouragement and support from those individuals who look at us and say, you can do anything.
Yeah.
You can do it, and nurses can do anything.
Yeah, they can. They just need the encouragement and they need the support. And fortunately, the NNBA is there for people. So let's talk a little bit more about conference. Can you give us a little hint about anything else? I mean, I'm excited about my presentation, but there are plenty of others. So can you drop any hints about what's
There
happening?
there really is. It's wonderful. Dr. Louise Jakubik, who is an amazing role model, is going to be our keynote speaker this year.
Good.
And she is going to be talking about creating an abundant life and work through 12 different revenue streams that nurses can do right
Yeah.
now. And what is great about that, once nurses hear this, is it's just going to open up all kinds of ideas that they didn't have, because there are certain things that nurses can do in a small way, still stay with what they're doing currently, and do it as they call it, side hustles. They can do it as a side hustle until it grows and they get comfort with it. So for example, one of those things I'm sure will be blogging. And that's how I started Unconventional Nurse. Before I knew I was writing a book. And so with Unconventional Nurse, I had a website and I had a blog. That's what I wrote. And that way people would get used to my voice and they would learn about it. And so that's one of the ways that Louise will be talking about. And she is just such an amazing example with her company, Nurse Builders, that provide certification courses for nurses, and so much more. And so we have a wonderful panel that's going to be presenting to nurses, along with an attorney that will be talking about intellectual property,
Ooh.
trademarks, and copyrights. And one of the things that I think nurses really need to protect themselves on is understanding how valuable their intellectual property is and how to
Mhm.
protect it. So I'm really looking forward to that presentation. We have a nurse that has a company, Melissa Cardine, Bridge Health Advocates. She'll be presenting on, a rewarding business doing that by sharing her story, which is an amazing story. And then, we have wonderful pre-conferences that are going on. I mean, everybody can find out about the conference by going to nursesbusiness.com and clicking on the banner tab conference. And it has every single thing out there, including the whole agenda. But we have nurses talking about branding and how to properly, build a powerful personal brand. Because as you're going out there and you're becoming a business owner, how do you represent yourself? How does the public see? How are you positioned in the market? So that's, there's just a large variety of things out there. We have a particular nurse coach, Mary Turner, who's going to talk about her career and all the different aspects and how they can win in business by certain strategies. And she has an amazing backdrop of a nursing career to share from, and that type of thing. And then we have a lot of workshops, and our workshops are very special because they're half-day workshops, and they're a deep dive into different aspects of, starting your own business, and a case management business is going to be in there. And Keith Carlson, he is a nurse of first, I call it, with blogging, with podcast. He's tremendous. And he's going to be doing on how to elevate and promote your podcasting business and develop one. And he does a great job with that. Many nurses have worked with Keith. So, geez, there's such a variety. I wish I could think of every single one that I've mentioned there, but there's probably, I think there's 10 sessions from the main stage, including a panel. Oh, and Donna Cardillo is going to wrap it all up by taking everything going on at the meeting and how nurses then can leave using the experience and setting their goals and setting their plan for the future. So it's exciting stuff.
I'll tell you, for anybody that is concerned about, well, I don't know what I don't know, and I don't know how to do it. I just think about all the material you've just covered in terms of the legal aspects of it, right? Which I'm sure will touch on some financial stuff too. And just learning to protect yourself. The branding piece, you're speaking my language as a career coach and a resume writer. So these are true business initiatives and business planning that everybody will benefit from. And I'm going to throw the offer out there that this will only be my second conference. So if you're listening to this and you're not sure if you want to come find my face, I will be a friendly face, but you can come see immediately. You can hook up with me. We'll talk. I'll take you around. And just know that you're in really good company with everyone else there whose primary objective is to help you succeed.
And one of the things you just mentioned about friendly faces, that's why exactly that the evening before the conference, we have a meet and greet reception so that everybody can come in and talk very casually in a nice, maybe have a drink, maybe have some hors d'oeuvres, and just be around each other, get to know each other, get excited, actually meet some of the speakers before you see them present on the stage. So it's a wonderful, encouraging, empowering time for nurses, whether you're thinking about entrepreneurship or career alternatives, different ways that you can use your nursing outside of the traditional model or a hospital-based model.
Love it. Absolutely love it. And I will also say that I attended that reception last year, and it was good because I was talking to, I think we had a brief conversation, but I was talking to some of the speakers, and they were just so accessible. And I didn't even know that they were speakers. They were just chatting. They were just talking, and it was really warm and welcoming. So Again, please, everybody, if you're considering this at all, you should definitely join us and have a good time. So we're about up with our time here, Michelle, but I'm going to drop the link to the registration so everybody can take a look at the full agenda. And I know we're going to be promoting and talking about it more. And hey, folks, it's in Vegas. So, that's a good time too, right? So everybody come out and have
Oh,
a
it's
good time.
wonderful. And this venue is just wonderful. It has everything they need. Over 11 restaurants are there, a bowling alley. In fact, one of our nurses is in a bowling league and she's in a tournament the evening the conference is over. So it was
Get out of
very
here.
exciting.
That's awesome.
There's a lot there, and it's a wonderful place.
And I will say too that as a person from out of town, I drove there by myself to South Point because that's where we're having it again, right?
Right.
Right. And it's not anywhere, crowded on the strip. It's super easy to get to, in and out, and it is beautiful and safe. So, hopefully people will come join us for that. I want to thank you again, Michelle, so very much for sharing your journey with us today and
Oh, it was
talking
my
with us.
pleasure.
Yeah, such fun too. And I love now that we have Gen X in common too. So we'll have to talk about
Oh
that.
my goodness, we're gonna have to sidebar on that.
I know. And I'm also put the link on Amazon for your book, Unconventional Nurse, if anybody even wants to get started with that. But hospital nursing is a beautiful thing. Going to school for nursing and not even working in the hospital, you don't have to do that if you want. To Michelle's point, there are all kinds of career alternatives out there for nurses. And the last thing I will say is, as we've said multiple times today, is nurses are smart and they can do anything. And we'll leave it at that. So thank you again, Michelle.
Oh, it was my pleasure.
All right. And thank you to everyone listening today. I will share Michelle's contact information and the conference information, the book information, everything. Please feel free to comment. Please feel free to share this with anybody that really needs to see it. And as you're watching this on the Inspire Careers YouTube channel, please feel free to subscribe and click that bell so that you can hear when we get dropped new material. Thank you again, Michelle. Everybody listening on, until we talk again, live inspired.